Welcome Dorico users. I would like to demonstrate the Universal Kontakt Instrument Template, UKIT for short, for Dorico Pro 5. This template is for Dorico users who want to use their own Kontakt libraries as playback instruments in their Dorico projects. The UKIT template allows you to easily and quickly create projects with up to 15 separate Kontakt instruments from any Kontakt library that you possess, plus one Kontakt percussion/drum instrument. This is optional, without the need to create expression maps or percussion maps or a drum kit. You can also add any built-in or custom instruments from your Dorico instrument library and use any other playback engine like Halion Sonic or Note Performer for those Dorico instruments in your final project. So you can combine your Kontakt instruments with your Dorico instruments into one project. Let's begin by taking a look at the UKIT template. I'm going to go to File, New from Project Template, down to Kontakt, UKIT for Dorico. All right, the project is loading. All right, playback is ready. We see the green outline of the play button. So let's take a look at what we've got here. At the first, when we go to setup, we can see that we have 16 players, including the first player, which is assigned to a Percussion Kit, all notes. And then we've got K instrument, this stands for Kontakt instrument. We've got 2 through 16. Now, if in your project you want to add a percussion kit or a drum kit, we've set this up in the template for you to easily be able to accomplish that. And you're going to put it on this first instrument, this first channel 1. So let's just take a look at, right now we have the full score open, and if I scroll down you'll see it's very crowded because of the percussion instrument, which contains all these. It's in grid form and it contains all these notes, and I'll explain later why that is. But the beauty of Dorico, of course, as we know, is that we can go to different layouts, which is really an incredible feature that really only appears in Dorico. I've never seen anything like it in Cubase or anything else. Okay, so if we go to this layout, Kontakt instruments 2 through 16, we can much more easily view just these basically 2 through 16 instruments, and they're all labeled K instrument 2, 3, and consecutive on down. Okay, now let's go back to just the percussion kit all notes. And if you have ever used percussion instruments, or more specifically drum kits in Kontakt, you know that basically the Kontakt, these kits are typically laid out with one instrument per note, and quite often the drum instrument will contain the entire range of the keyboard in order to incorporate a lot of different drum sounds. So what we've done here with the UKIT is enable you, regardless of what drum instrument or percussion instrument you load in, you're going to be able to utilize like all the notes in that particular instrument. Now, right now you can see our top note is G8, which is the highest note in Kontakt. Now, there's something important to know about Kontakt. Kontakt, the way it lays out its keyboard is what instruments are essentially an octave lower than they appear in Dorico, according to the MIDI note numbers. This is just a quirk in Kontakt, but it can make it a little bit difficult to input notes on a grid, because you have to constantly transpose down an octave to get the right note. This will become clear later when we load in as demonstration a Kontakt drum instrument. But I wanted to just mention that. Now, if we want to see all the notes, we simply go to the gallery view. And here we actually have the notes with their proper labels. That is, each note is one octave up, and the entire range of MIDI notes goes, the top note would be G9, and the bottom note is C-1. So basically, what I wanted to show you is that you've got the entire range of notes here to be able to compose on, and you don't have to create a separate drum kit for each different Kontakt drum instrument. And if you've ever tried to do this, you know it's a very laborious task. So we've eliminated that problem. All right. Now let's take a look at, we're at the setup tab here, but let's take a look at the play menu. This will give you a better idea of how this template is structured. So if we go to, right now we're on per kit all notes, but let's just go to the full score. And under the VST MIDI, what we see is UKIT endpoint 16. And there's just one Kontakt instance. I'm going to open up the instrument. As you know, you click on this Show Instrument button. And it opened up in my second window, but I'll drag that over here. And what we can see is that we have MIDI channel 1, we have 16 instruments slots, so to speak, and they're on consecutive MIDI channels between 1 and 16. Now, you'll notice that the last one, 16, looks different from all the others, and that's because channel 16 is actually what's called a Kontakt instrument bank. And this is something that's not utilized too often in Kontakt, but it actually is, it can be a very creative feature. And we'll explain more and demonstrate how you can use this channel 16 Kontakt instrument bank in your Dorico project. We'll explain that later. But I wanted you to see, just to see how we have these 16 instruments in Kontakt. Okay. All right. Let's close this out for a minute, and we'll go to the track inspector. And if we look at first the per kit all notes, we've got an expression map, which is called the Universal Key Switch, going from octaves 1, -1, 0, 1, 2. This will become clear later. And then what's more important is we have the universal drum map that we've developed. And we'll demonstrate this as well. But I wanted you to just see that the template comes with, in the case of the drum map, you've got two maps. You've got the expression map and the perc map. In the case of instruments, you just have the expression map. So instruments 2 through 16 all have, I should say 2 through 15 have what's called the Universal Key Switch Expression Map. And then the bank instrument, instrument 16, channel 16, has its own unique expression map called the program change 1 through 30. And again, once we demonstrate how the Kontakt instrument bank works, which essentially it works on program chain messages in order to change the instrument, you'll see and understand why we've created a special expression map just for instrument number 16. Okay? All right, so we'll stop there for a minute, and we'll go on to the next aspect of the UKIT. Thank you. Okay, let's walk through setting up a percussion instrument with UKIT. We'll start, we're here in the setup. Let's go to play. We'll open up our Kontakt instrument. And we're going to load in this library called Cuba. And we'll do bongos. So we drag the bongos NKI and we drop it on top of slot number 1. Okay. Now what we can do is let's change our view to give us a little more real estate to single view in Kontakt. Okay, so we can move this around. So we have this instrument here, complete set of articulations, more than you can shake a stick at for bongos. And we have a nice labeling up here with the key map numbers there, at least on C1, C2, and so forth. Okay, so let's go to our right and bring up that screen again. And what we can see here is that this instrument, bongos, covers a range from octave 1 up to octave 5. We have D sharp. This last number is some wood block, so we don't need that. We'll just go to D5. So we need the number. If we're going to use this entire instrument, we need the keys from C1 up to D sharp 5. Okay, so now we can go back and we go to our setup and we click this arrow and we're going to edit our drum kit, our percussion kit, put it in grid. So we want C1. Now, as I explained before, Kontakt has a quirk, and that is that whatever, if we have C1 in Kontakt, is going to be equivalent to C2 in terms of MIDI note numbers and in terms of Dorico. So we have to change the range we need. C1 becomes C2 and D sharp 5 becomes D sharp 6. So anything below and above that range we can get rid of. So let's do that. Okay, let's get rid of the bottom range of notes first. So the note below C2 is B1. So we just scroll down to B1, highlight that, and then just go down to C1. and hold down your shift key so you can select all the notes in that range. And then go down here to the trash can to delete those notes. Okay, and then we want to delete the top range, and our range went up to D#6, so we want to delete anything E6 and above. So we go down to E6 and hold down the shift key, go up to G9, and again hit the garbage can, hit OK. Alright. Okay, let's close out the Edit Percussion Kit and go into write mode. Note entry, we'll select eighth notes, and if we use the up and down arrow keys, we can actually audition the sounds. So we don't actually need to have the names in there when we can audition. Alright. So let's say I like a real simple bongo pattern with this C3 and C#3. Alright, now I can enter in my notes. Then maybe I want to end off the half note. On the third beat, I'll enter this roll, and we'll just make that a half note. Okay? So we can play that back. And there we go. So really, that's really all there is to it with the template and a percussion instrument. If we wanted to, we could go back to the setup mode and edit Percussion Kit and go to the notes that we were using. Now remember we have to go up, the way the notes were named in the Percussion Kit was designed to match the Kontakt names, but in our grid we have to go up one more. So we had C4 and C#4. So I'm sorry, we had C3 and C#3 in the in our score, as you can see, but we have to raise that one octave. So we can go up to C4, hit edit names, and we want to use the short name, the second one down, and just call that bongo 1. And then go to C#4. Edit names, and we'll just call this bongo 2. Okay. Then if we go back to our score, we can see that we have the note names in here. So that's completely optional. Of course, you can save this project and the names will be saved with it. It's not going to overwrite your default template or anything like that. So that's certainly possible to do that, but that's optional, as I said. Okay, so we've covered the first track, so to speak, or the first instrument, which is percussion, and now we can move on to the other Kontakt instruments, which are actually much simpler. Okay, all right. Okay, let's go back to setup mode and we'll choose this layout, Kontakt Instruments 2 through 16. We'll go to our play mode and we'll bring up our Kontakt instrument. Let's minimize the Cuba. And now we can drag in any library we choose onto our Kontakt Multi. So let's go to Cinematic Studio Woodwinds and we'll drag in the flutes. We'll put those on slot 2. And we'll drag in the clarinets, put that on slot 3. Now we can go back to write mode. Let's go to K instrument 2, note entry, and we're ready to go with the flutes. Go to K instrument 3. We've got our clarinet. Okay, now let's open up the instrument again. And I recommend, if you have 2 monitors, to take the Kontakt instrument and move it over to your second monitor, because as you can see here with this library, you can actually, the key switches are laid out right there. And this is true of I'd say most of the libraries. The key switches are visible. So if you put your Kontakt instrument, your Kontakt Multi on a second screen, you will be able to see these key switches. Now, another thing you could do, let's move this over to I'll move it out. Let's go to if you select, let's say, the first note and do Alt-C, you can bring up a comment window, and then I can type in these. In this case, there's 6 key switches, so I could type in sustain, C0, trills, D sharp 0, flutter, E0, measured repetition, that's D0. Staccato, F0, and marcato, F sharp 0. Let's move these over a little bit. So they kind of line up. So basically what I've just done is create a key switch legend. Now you don't need this, obviously. If you can see the key switches on your second monitor, this would be redundant. But there may be instances where you want to do this, and then click OK. And then if we open up the comments, we can actually read our key switches on the right-hand column here. So that could be handy in certain circumstances. But again, you know, it's a little extra work and you just may not want to bother with that. But you've got your key switches. Now, the next thing we'll do is examine how you enter these key switches. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at how we enter articulations with the UKIT template. Now, before I do that, I want to add a few more notes so we give ourselves a little bit enough room to actually see these articulations. So I'll go back to note entry mode and let me do eighth notes. Okay. Now we can go to open our techniques page, column I should say. And then if we go back, we can see that sustain is C0. So let's begin these 4 bars with a sustain articulation. So that's C0. So we select the first note here. And then we go over to the right, and all we need to do is select C0. And that will enter that articulation. Now, let's select this last 8th note of bar 2 and drag this back so you can see. Let's make that staccato, which is F0. Right? So we select that note, we go back to our techniques, and we select F0, and that puts that in there. Okay, let's put the last articulation on this C in measure 4, and we'll use the flutter articulation, which is E0. So we'll select the C and then go to E0. All right, and I've changed the tempo here to slow it down so we can hear it a little bit better. Let's play what we've got. That switches to staccato. And then the last note is the C0. I can I'll bring over the Kontakt window so you can see these articulations changing. Oops. There you can see it just switched to F0 staccato. Then you'll see it go to flutter on the C right there. Okay, let me move this back. Okay, so that's basically it as far as adding articulations. As I mentioned before, we can hide these articulations by selecting them first and then going to the properties panel below under hidden and just clicking on that slider there, and now these articulations will be hidden in the final score. Okay. Okay, let's add another Kontakt instrument to our project, and we'll go up to Kontakt Instruments 2 through 16, and we've got, let me minimize this, minimize the clarinets. Okay, so we can go anywhere we want in our library. And let's try this Action Woodwinds. We'll load that into slot 4. Okay, I've put Dorico and the Kontakt multi instrument side by side, so I can demonstrate the Universal Key Switch Expression Map in action. And Action Woodwinds is essentially a phrase library, so that if you look down here at the red keys, rose-colored keys, what have you, in octave 0, essentially the first 4 of these keys switch out the variations. Maybe you can see up here the variations changing, and then they have these staccatissimo, staccato, marcato, sustain, trill half tone, and trill whole tone. So those are the articulations, and I basically put all of them up here more or less in order on top of these whole notes, just so you can see the Universal Key Switch Expression Map working with a phrase library like this. Okay, so we're going to just play it, and if you keep your eye on the Action Woodwinds window, the Kontakt window, particularly down here below the staff, you'll see these articulations changing, and we're going to start with C0. That's the first one. So we'll begin there, and you can see each articulation changing at every bar. Okay, so that's a demonstration of the Universal Key Switch Expression Map and how you can use it in a phrase type library, as well as any other type of Kontakt library with typical articulations like sustain and pizzicato, things like that. And we'll move on to adding some more instruments to our Kontakt multi now. Okay, let's minimize the Action Woodwinds instrument, and we can see that our next available slot is on MIDI channel 5. So I'm going to load in Chris Hines, English horn. and I'll load in Blue Street Brass by Indigenous. This library contains a number of vintage instruments from, well, you can see in this case this tuba from 1900, alto horn from 1940. There's some Civil War instruments here. It's a beautiful library, actually. We'll select the 1908 trombone with vibrato on that. Then we'll, how about the a flatus brass. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And we'll take the French horn and we'll drag that onto slot 7. All right. Our next open slot, as you can see, is on MIDI channel 8. Let's go to, how about Lumina? Drop that directly onto channel 8. I think you've got the hang of this, that when you drag an instrument from the library over to these blanks, you just have to drop it. It's very simple. You just drop it onto the correct slot. All right, we'll scroll down. Now we're on MIDI channel 9, and we can load in, how about Exosphere? From Sample Logic. All right. It's got some beautiful pads, this library. All right, now we've got our next open slot is MIDI channel 10. How about an excellent string library, modern scoring strings. And we'll do solo violin. Drag that onto the channel 10 slot. All right, and we'll do one more. We're not going to fill all the slots just for the sake of brevity in this demonstration, but I think I've put enough of them in there so you can see that you know, a decent outfitted computer can handle these instruments, or 16 instruments I should say. Okay, I'm going to do one more Ethno World, the dudek, with the key switch version. We'll drag that onto slot 11. Okay, Now we've got 11 instruments, including our percussion instrument. And what I want to show you next is how the slot 16 or MIDI channel 16 Kontakt bank works. Okay, let's scroll down to slot 16. Here's our Kontakt instrument bank, and we're going to choose this Yamaha PSR instrument. This was a synth going back a couple of decades, which kind of a workstation which contained just dozens and dozens of different instruments. You can see here all the different categories. But this type of instrument really lends itself well to the Kontakt bank, and you'll see why in a moment. So what we can do, we could actually load in, these are all the NKIs. So we have piano, and we could load in a piano, and then we can go to another category. We could go to our accordion and load one of those in. But let's just say we're going to concentrate on synth. Now I've set it up so that the UKIT can accommodate up to 30 instruments in the bank. When I say accommodate, this will become more clear in a few moments, but what I mean is that this bank allows us to use key switching, and that's kind of the unique feature. Let me first just load in. I'm going to load in 20 instruments. So I highlight them from 1 to 20, and all I have to do to load all these in is just drag them to this slot number 1 and let go. And you'll see they're beginning to load. Each NKI is going to load in a different slot. Okay, let's go to our setup menu, and we'll go to the K Instrument 16 layout and play. And here we have a different expression map on this Kontakt bank instrument. So let's take a look at that. We'll hit the edit expression map. And what you see here are PC 1, and it goes through 30 is the highest. And what the PC stands for, very simply, is program change. So if we look at PC 1 and we look at the instruction, it says program change 0. And if we bring up our Kontakt instrument, our Kontakt multi, we can see here there's a 001, and that corresponds to program change 1. So in other words, the way Kontakt sets up these banks is that each NKI is given a slot, and that slot has a program change number. And if you think about it, if you go back to the early synths, or maybe not so early synths, but you know, the workstations like this Yamaha PSR, whatever it is, SY something, you know, you had these buttons on the keyboard, and they allowed you to change, you know, input a program change number, and that would switch out your instrument. Well, that's exactly what this Kontakt bank is analogous to. So what you can see is this our expression map that I've called program change 1 through 30 is just simply an expression map which executes program changes 1 through 30. And that'll cover up to, which means that we can have up to 30 instruments in one of these, in this Kontakt bank on slot 6 MIDI channel 16, and we can switch at any time in the music, at any measure, at any note. We can place one of these key switches, and it'll actually switch the instrument, which really kind of leads itself to some interesting creative possibilities. So again, if you look at program change 17, or PC 17, it says program change 16. And the reason these program change numbers are always one less than the number that appear, than the name of the switch in the expression map. And that's because program change numbers begin on 0, not 1. And that's why they're always one less. Okay, let's close out of our expression map and go to write. And I prepared what have we got, 4-bar melody here. And if you see, as you can see, there are these articulations, these techniques, as they're called in Dorico. PC1 standing for program change 1. On the second bar, program change 3. Program change 12 on the third bar. The fourth bar starts at program change 16 and then ends with program change 3, going back to that sound. And so what we're going to have is just, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different instruments playing this 4-measure melody. So let's hear it. Okay, and that's really all there is to it. Again, if we look at our play menu and bring up the Kontakt instrument, we can see the 12, I'm sorry, what do we have? We have 20 instruments, 20 NKIs loaded onto this Kontakt bank, and we're able to switch to any one of these instantaneously with the UKIT program change articulations. Here's another example using the UKIT Kontakt Instrument 16. This time we're using Cinebrass Pro, and we have some horn sounds, horn ensemble sounds, and I've loaded 6 of them into the Kontakt bank on slot 16. And we have the first one is horn solo legato, then we have horn ensemble triple forte. Number 3 would be horn ensemble stopped. Number 4 is horn ensemble flutters. Number 5, horn ensemble triad chords, and then number 13, horn ensemble rips. So let's listen to that. Okay, I'm going to play it one more time, so maybe you can change your focus to looking at the Kontakt instrument, or if you were paying attention to that, you can look at the score and see the techniques up here on at the beginning of the measures, program change 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then going back to 1. So very simply, this is allowing, the UKIT allows you to load in your instruments, your NKIs, into the Kontakt bank and then switch among them very, very easily by just putting in these techniques wherever you want them. You just select the note and then you go over to your techniques and you select the program change number, which is going to correspond to the slot in the Kontakt bank. And really that's all there is to it. So whichever you want to follow along with, or maybe you can follow both at the same time, you'll see how these instruments in the Kontakt bank are switching based on these techniques, these program change techniques. So we'll just look at that one more time, and perhaps I'll slow it down a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, all right, let's play it. Okay, now that we've covered bringing instruments or NKIs into our Kontakt multi, there's a couple of other things we have to address. And the first thing is we want to rename these players so that when we go to the score, we can see the name of the instrument. For instance, if we go to Kontakt 2, we just see K instrument 2 up here. We don't see anything near the staff. If we go to the full score, and scroll down, what we see are the staves are named Kontakt instruments by number, but that doesn't tell us what the instrument in Kontakt is, and obviously we want to be able to do that. So it's very simple. We just can refer to our Kontakt multi here and just go through it and rename each player. And we've set up the layout so that the name of the player will be reflected in the score itself. So the first instrument we have is this Cuba percussion instrument, and we'll just name that Cuba percussion. We could name it bongo since that's a particular patch we're using, but I'll leave it there. Okay, and then our next instrument is our Cinematic Studio Woodwinds, or CSW for short, 2 flutes. Okay, and you can see when I put this in, let me make the window a little bit larger. Okay, so you can see when I renamed the player, the new name is reflected in the score. Oh, there's a setting in the layout that provides for that function. All right, and our third instrument here is a cinematic woodwind, so CSW 2 clarinets. And you can see the name is reflected there. So for the sake of time, I won't bother going through the rest of the instruments, but I think you get the idea that all you have to do is click on each player and then put in the name of the Kontakt instrument. So I'll do one more. This is the Action Woodwinds. Okay, and then when we go to our layouts for individual instruments, we'll see the instruments up here, so it makes it all very clear. All right, very good. So we can see the names of the instruments. When we go to the layouts for the individual instruments, we can see the name of the Kontakt instrument up here in the top left corner. All right, we'll move on to the next subject, which has to do with adding Dorico instruments, that is non-Kontakt instruments, into our project. The process for adding Dorico instruments to a UKIT template project is exactly the same as adding Dorico instruments to any Dorico project. As an example, let's add a string ensemble to this UKIT project. We can see we now have a violin, violin 2, viola, cello, and double bass. Let's create a new layout just for these new strings. So I'm going to go down to the layouts panel and hit add custom score, and I'm going to call that strings. Then I go over to the left panel and I'm going to select just the new Dorico string instruments. And then I'll click on my flow here, and now we can go to our strings layout and see the 5 new Dorico instruments that we've added to our, what started out as our UKIT template project. The last step is to create a new playback template that will accommodate both the Kontakt instruments that we have set up in the UKIT template and the additional Dorico instruments. So in order to do that, we go to the play menu, playback template, and in this case I could duplicate the UKIT template playback, but I'll just make a brand new playback template just to show you that method, and we'll give this a name. We'll just call it demo playback template, and then we're going to add first our endpoint, which is called the UKIT endpoint 16. All right. And then we want to pick the player for our Kontakt instruments, and this will generally be, your default player. This in my case, this is going to be Note Performer. In your case, it might be Hallian Sonic, but I'm going to choose Note Performer. So as you can see, the order of the endpoints is important, and we have to have our Kontakt instrument endpoint first, and then our overall Note Performer will cover any other instruments that we add to this project. So that's all there is to it, and I'll just hit OK. And then what we can do is hit the apply and close, and that should add the playback Note Performer to our Dorico string instruments. So let's just hit apply and close. As you can see up here, it's loading and it's ready. And we can verify this by going to the play menu. And now we see that under the strings layout, we have Note Performer for violin and violin 2, viola, cello, and double bass. We could see each one is on the proper channel, is given a unique channel. And then if we go to our Kontakt instruments, I'll go to the full score so we can see our percussion. We see that all of them, the Percussion Kit, all notes, is all under the UKIT endpoint, which is utilizing the Kontakt multi. And you can see the channels. It begins with the percussion instrument on channel 1. That's always on channel 1. And incidentally, you can also see the expression map. A unique one is used by the percussion map. And there's a percussion map here. So we have the unique keys, we have the universal key switch. That's used by all of the Kontakt instruments. But the percussion instrument also has one has to apply a percussion map, and so we have the universal drum map. And the other instruments don't have a percussion map because they're not percussion instruments, so we can see that they all use the universal key switch. And we can see the channels match up the instruments. And that includes the Kontakt bank. The only thing about the Kontakt bank instrument, that uses a different expression map, because as we saw, the Kontakt bank uses, instead of key switches, it uses program change messages, program change messages. So that expression map is different from the expression map on instruments 2, actually instruments 1 through 15. All right? Okay, now we've come to almost the end of setting up our UKIT project with the UKIT template, and the only thing we've got left to do is a little cleanup operation, which is you notice that we did not actually use all of the slots in the Kontakt multi. We only had these instruments, so 12 through 15 we didn't use. 1, 2, 3, 4 slots we didn't use. So we used, including the percussion, we set up 12 instruments. So all I need to do is just select these 4 and simply delete them. So that completes the demonstration of the UKIT template. If you decide to purchase the template, it does come with complete installation instructions, and I hope this becomes a valuable time-saving tool in your composing art arsenal. Thank you very much.